Mexican family's death at border looms over ongoing Justice Department standoff with Texas. We have got a standoff between Biden and Abbott, Governor Greg Abbott, state of Texas. Abbott has basically booted out Biden's federal border patrol and said, if you guys aren't taking care of this issue, we will. I just got back from Eagle Pass, Texas, where this Shelby Park is located. Let's get into it. I'm going to give you some firsthand video and some firsthand information. It kind of basically says the feds are weaponizing this whole drowning thing that happened a week and a half ago because the situation didn't really happen the way they said it did. Let's get into it. Here we go. After days of wrangling over control of a heavily trodden stretch of the U.S.-Mexico border, Texas and federal officials remain in a showdown with Governor Greg Abbott, who has refused to cede any ground. Now, when I flew into Texas last Wednesday, that was Wednesday the 17th, at I think it was midnight, the feds had given state of Texas a drop dead. Hey, you got to start letting our guys into your Shelby Park there. And even though it's not state of Texas's park, it's the city of Eagle Pass's park, they're not letting Border Patrol in because Governor Greg Abbott of Texas said, you guys move along. We'll have our guys take care of it. And with the amount of illegals that are not passing through this section, when you actually hold your ground and you don't act like basically, a babysitter getting people across the border and then just welcoming in and chaperoning them in. When you don't do that, when you actually arrest them with your state troopers, things tend to go a little differently, right? A little bit differently. The deaths of a mother and her 2 children last week brought this rift to a boiling point. Federal officials say Texas is unable to properly attend to human safety in this area and rescue migrants who became trapped or succumbed to dangerous conditions when crossing the Rio Grande. Texas authorities blamed the Biden administration for 3 deaths, saying that they happened because the U.S. has failed to properly enforce its immigration laws. The whole timeline on these the migrants drowning, that was an accident. You got people in heavily flowing river. This is not walking through the shallows at your knees. This river is moving. I've got all kinds of footage of that. You can check out some of my videos. This is not an easy border crossing. And especially at night. This happened at like 8 o'clock at night. Let's read here. At the heart of this standoff were the victims, Victorma de la Sancha Cerros, 33, her daughter, Yorle Ruby, 10, and son Jonathan Augustin, 8, who drowned while crossing the river the evening of January 12th. It's my understanding that 5 of them were linked up by hand going across, as you do. They've literally got signs on the Mexico side stating, hey, hold hands. If you're going across, there's, safety in numbers. And one of the children was in the middle and let go of their hand, let go of the adult's hand that they were holding on to. So he had a break in the chain. I mean, just absolutely heartbreaking. But the reason this is happening is because all of these hundreds of thousands and millions of immigrants know, hey, we get there now, they're going to welcome us with open arms. They're going to give us, free medical. They're going to give us, we're going to get clothes. We're going to get a bus ride, all this stuff. They're hearing, in Venezuela and Colombia, Honduras, they're hearing all these things. It may or may not be true, but, you got to take that ride. You got to go ride La Bestia, the trains that go from the southern portion of Mexico all the way through the northern portion. And they're not called La Bestia because the trains are big and bad. It's the people in Mexico. It's the Mexican police and the coyotes and the smugglers that just basically take advantage of those people that are migrating northward, right? The family was traveling with Monica de la Sancha Cerros, 30, and her son, Victor Antonio, 10, both of whom were rescued by Mexican officials. All 5 family members were from the state of Mexico. The drowning happened near Eagle Pass, Shelby Park, a 47-acre property that the state took over after migrant crossings began to increase. The city has said it has no role in the state's actions to prevent migrants from entering the U.S. because it's a border. It said public entry to the area has been restricted. Let's take a look at that. This is the boat launch that's in play. the feds said, hey, if we had access to the boat launch, we would have been able to do a rescue. So allegedly, a drowning happened somewhere over here at 8 o'clock at night. All 3 people passed away somewhere right around 8 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, the Federal Border Patrol went to one of there's 4 or 5 gates. Here's a gate right here. You can see it. I know it's small, but there's a gate, and they've always got a Humvee out front, and they've got a couple of soldiers out front. So they went to the gate at 9 o'clock and said, hey, the state of Texas says that they didn't ask anything about helping out with the rescue. The Federal Border Patrol says, hey, we're trying to get in to help with this drowning, and we've still got 2 people that are out there in the river. Well, you can see here that if something's happening right here, you're going to hear it. You're going to see it, because you've got soldiers all lining this area. I was on the Mexico side where I took this video right here. You could hear cars running across the river. It's that close. So if you've got a drowning, and maybe the drowning happened over here on the Mexico side, you're going to see it. You're going to see it. And so what happened is at 9:45, the Texas National Guard said, hey, we do see something. They called Border Patrol and Federal Border Patrol, and they said, 9:45, we do see something happening, but it's on the Mexico side. And Border Patrol said, yeah, the Mexican immigration has got it handled. It's on their side. They're handling the remaining 2 people that survived. They're going to take them to the hospital, whatever. They've got hypothermia. So this all, from the Texas side, nobody saw anything. There wasn't anything. These people drowned probably on the Mexico side, period, right? But Department of the Border Patrol is saying, oh, if we could have just gotten in there, but they're not letting us into the park. This is Shelby Park right here. It's 40-something acres, and Texas has basically excommunicated Border Patrol from that area. They've taken it over because Border Patrol, all they were doing is literally just holding people's hands, literally getting them up over the banks and then over, the boxcars, and just this ridiculous situation, having 22,000 people come through this area in the week before Christmas. And 4,000 people alone on December 20th came through this section of the Rio Grande. And then 302,000 in the month of December alone came through this area. So you've got these storylines that are just, what's going on here? But this migrant drowning one, that's just fully weaponized. That's all you can say there. Because at 8 o'clock, when this all took place, these folks drowned, boom. And nothing was really said until 9 o'clock. It was game over. It was long game over. So this whole notion that if Border Patrol, Federal Border Patrol, Biden's Border Patrol would have been able to get their personnel, to the boat ramp and launch some boats, because at night they don't run boats, and it's dark. It's pitch dark there at like 7 o'clock, and, not a lot of street lights going on, and it's pretty dark. You'd have some lights going on at the river, but it's just. Lawyers for Texas say they are simply affirming their state's rights amid a border crisis. They also disputed the details of what happened with the women and her 2 children who were drowned last week, and differed on the details of the other migrants in distress that night in the river. You've basically got 2 wildly different stories. Who are you going to believe? It does seem weird, right? It does seem weird. Texas lawyers and the federal government sought to blame the state for a tragedy that had already occurred before any federal officials even contacted Texas. Yeah, the people were dead. They had drowned. I mean, a terrible, horrific situation, but like 700 people have drowned, have died making this crossing on this section of the Rio Grande. 700 people. I mean, that happens because you've basically told the world, if you want to come into U.S., come in now. We'll help you out. Go through Mexico. Go right up through that southern border. We'll get you here. And they end up just paying, the cartel just thousands and thousands of dollars. And the cartel is making $32 million a week, something like that. Just these insane numbers. They'll gross like $1 billion. over the last year. It's insane numbers. At 8 p.m. last Friday, Victorma de la Sanchez Cerros and her 2 children drowned near Shelby Park. This is 2 days after Texas takes over. According to court documents, U.S. officials say that de la Sanchez Cerros and her children were in the water near the boat ramp when they drowned. It doesn't sound like that was the case. I spent a lot of time watching these guys. They would have heard. If somebody was screaming, help me, they would have heard. They would have been right there. They've got boats in the water. At 8 p.m. that same evening, Mexican officials alerted the U.S. Border Patrol about migrants in distress on the U.S. side of the river near the Shelby Park boat ramp, according to Chief Border Patrol Agent Robert Danley, who oversees the area that includes Eagle Pass. Monica de la Sanchez Cerros and her son were also near the U.S. side border before they turned back and went back across the river. Does that make any sense? You're about to cross into the U.S. You're on the U.S. side. Maybe they got caught up in a portion of the river that they couldn't work out a way to get through a deep section. Don't really know. But this river here in this area, it's running pretty fast. And you can see how people would drown like that. Texas attorneys said that in court documents that state personnel didn't see anyone in distress in the water or at the time, and only learned about the drownings after the fact from Border Patrol. 7 migrants in 2 groups had tried to cross that night, Danley said. The first was a group of 5 people, the de la Sanchez Cerros women and the 3 children. Border Patrol attempted to reach Monica de la Sanchez Cerros and her 10-year-old son. Mexican officials would not comment on whether the 2 mothers were related, but Mexican media identifies them as sisters. That's what I heard as well. 2 men also tried to cross that night. So Texas is really putting the kibosh on this. And then shortly after that, they started arresting. So you had Friday night, you had Texas took over on a Wednesday. Friday night, you had the drownings, and then you go through the weekend. And then the following Wednesday, when I got there, Wednesday, January the 17th, they made their first arrest. I drove into the park at 10:30 at night because I just wanted to see what it looked like, and I'd already checked into my hotel. I got down there at 10:30 at night, and there was a big white van like they use to transport the migrants, and it was loaded up with folks. I think they got 6 or 8 people, something like that. And I was able to see into the van. And I'm like, what's going on here? That's weird. And one of the guys was super dark complexion. Looks like he might have been from like Sudan or something. And he just looked deer in the headlights. Yeah, maybe he'd been walking for a few months, right? And then he just did a border crossing, and now he's sitting in a state trooper's, van. I don't know. It's just this surreal deal going on there. When a Border Patrol agent arrived at Shelby Park, the gate erected by the state was closed. It's closed for everybody right now. The only way even media can get in is if you have permission to go in there and shoot some footage. In a conversation through the gate, personnel from the Texas Military Department, a branch of the state police that operates at the border, refused the agent access to the park. Well, they've kicked him out. Plus, they weren't going to do anything. What were they going to do? The people had already drowned an hour before. As Monica de los Sanchez Cerros and her sons were on the U.S. side of the river and no one came to help them, Border Patrol officials said they tried to return to Mexico. Mexican officials rescued them by airboat and returned to Mexico, where they were treated for hypothermia. So the photo we're looking at here is you got a Humvee overlooking the river, and they're saying that the drowning happened somewhere right in this area. In the background, you've got the big bridge. You've got the international bridge where you can walk that I took into Mexico. And then these kind of arched ones, those are for train. You've got a massive train. You've got all kinds of goods coming into across the border there. You've got a port. And so, the fact that all this stuff is in play, it's because so many people have come through this area right here. And this is literally the boat launch that we're looking at right here. Danley stated in court documents, because you got court documents going back and forth, you got the U.S. Supreme Court involved. They want to get a reading. The feds want to get a reading on whether the big orange floating barricade that they've got a little bit further, you can see in this photo, a little beyond those bridges back there, beyond that, maybe by like half a mile or a mile, You've got this big floating 1,000-foot long floating barricade that's been working really well. And the feds, Border Protection, want to say, hey, you can't, as a state, you guys can't be putting that stuff up. Only we can do that. They want to be able to cut the concertina wire, cut the razor wire. It makes no sense, because are you trying to keep people out, or are you just trying to bring as many in as possible? It seems like up until like a week and a half ago, they were just trying to bring as many in as possible. Dansley stated in court documents that the Border Patrol agent mentioned in the park's entry gate that 2 migrants were in distress. Texas lawyers offered a different account. They said that a Texas Military Department colonel, staff sergeant, and a sergeant at the gate stated the federal agent expressed no urgency to retrieve 2 migrants. That's why I say this story has been wildly weaponized. And it's because, if we would have just had access to the boat ramp, this boat ramp right here, would have been able to get our boats in, an hour later. Yeah. And people already drowned. They were dead. This is a non-story. But you can see how it's been weaponized. Well, if we only had control of that park, we wouldn't let this happen. The military inside the park, they are Johnny on the spot on everything. I mean, they're on it. They're on it because they don't want to let folks in. They've been tasked with, all right, bring in Texas State Patrol. We're already there, and they will arrest them, and they will handle it accordingly. Put them in jail. Let Texas judges duke it out, instead of this whole crazy situation where you take them up to a migrant center and they get checked out, and then you just turn them loose, via bus to anywhere in the country they want to go. It's a sanctuary city, right? So even if it had been an emergency, Texas lawyers said the Border Patrol had no watercraft or equipment to perform a rescue at the time. It was dark. They don't run in the dark. They said the Border Patrol had stopped water patrols earlier in the day, as they do. They don't patrol at night. The Texas Military Department had about 20 personnel patrolling the area, conducting nighttime surveillance with spotlights, night vision goggles, and thermal imaging devices. Colonel Christopher Fletcher said in court documents, any persons in distress could easily be seen and heard. 100% agreed. I'll show you an indication of that. I can hear that truck running, that big diesel truck running. Got all the razor wire, got all the clothes hung up on the razor wire, a little bit of an inlet there. But I hear one of the river boats going. I'm hoping I get to see that. That'd be cool from this side. So I am, at this point in time, I am south of the International Bridge here. I've walked up the riverbanks. This area here has literally just been loaded with migrants making this crossing. But the fact that, you can hear things clearly because sound travels across water super clear. And there was nobody down on the Mexico side when I was there. It's just this crazy experience. It's like it's just wildly loaded up. It's wildly loaded up on the U.S. side, and then over on this side, you got nothing. You had 1 or 2 guys with some kind of assault rifles walking around, but if you wanted to just march on down there and do your thing and try and cross, you were going to have a good shot at that. So there was a migrant woman who had been detained near the boat ramp and transferred to state police. Between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., personnel also found a migrant climbing near a shipping container in Shelby Park. I saw that. I have a clip of the police lights when they were arresting that individual. When the men complained of symptoms of hypothermia, state personnel transferred him in emergency medical services for treatment. And something that the cartel, the smugglers that bring these folks in, they tell the illegal immigrants, hey, if you got any existing conditions that you need to go to a hospital for right now, go ahead and cut yourself on the razor wire. Get yourself bleeding a little bit. And then the minute we get you in on the U.S. side, they will take you to a hospital. I mean, that's good advice because it works, right? You can't have people just bleeding out at Shelby Park. You got to get them some help. You're going to arrest them. But I still think if somebody's hurt, Texas state troopers, they're just going to be right to the right to the hospital. Before a Texas staff sergeant drove to the gate to speak with Border Patrol, he said he noticed that what looked like Mexican officials responding to an emergency event on the Mexican shore. They were. The aunt and the son had made it back over to that side. Lawyers for the state contest the allegation that Texas won't allow federal and law enforcement area into the area in dispute. They said the state allows Border Patrol to access the boat ramp at Shelby Park so agents can patrol along the river and lets them have access to other locations across the Rio Grande. They said the state also allows Border Patrol officials quick entry into the park to respond to medical emergencies. This one wasn't a medical emergency because it was a drowning that had happened way earlier that could not have been prevented. It couldn't have been prevented. In court filings, Ganley from the Border Patrol said that federal agents were not permitted to visually monitor the Shelby Park area when the 3 deaths and 2 rescues happened. Doesn't matter. You wouldn't have seen it because it probably happened over on the Mexico side because these guys are all over it and they would have heard yells for help. Or if they didn't, it's because the mother and the 2 kids went in so quick, didn't have a chance, and it just happens that fast. And their bodies get carried down, or they drown close. I think they probably drowned close to the shore because they recovered all 3 bodies. Sometimes that can just take, hours and hours, days. It takes days in Lake Washington here. He said Texas officials have blocked mobile video surveillance inside the park's area that can find migrants in distress. He said, Texas National Guard is all over this. They are doing the job now. So this whole thing where the Border Patrol can't get in and do their thing, you weren't doing your job before anyway. So rescues continue along that section of the border as the court drama remains in limbo. On Thursday morning, Mexican officials rescued 3 Mexican migrants in the Rio Grande near Piedras Negras, where the woman and her 2 kids died a week before, because it's a low, shallow area of the river right now. You know how the river bottom changes? Well, they figure out, all right, we can make it here. And then, you have a huge volume of water come through from a storm or something, and the river bottom gets changed. Grupo Beta, an aid group with the Mexican National Institute of Migration, rescued the trio from an islet where they were stranded in the Rio Grande. On Wednesday night, Mexican officials rescued an Ecuadorian migrant who had been in the river for an extended period of time near an international bridge that shadows Shelby Park. That's the one we just looked at. It's the one I walked over. The person was treated for hypothermia. So in spite of Texas doing all of this stuff, the migrants are still trying to get across. They haven't gotten the word. They haven't gotten the word that, all right, this is what's going on. You can still take your chances. But if you get arrested here, there's a good chance that state troopers are going to take you to jail. It's not going to be this nice hand-holding experience of we walk you to the van and then you go to the migrant center and then you stay there for a few days. We check you out and then we ship you by bus. I walked around there a lot. There were 0 illegal aliens roaming about. Everybody was a local. So these illegal immigrants do not want to stay in a border town. They want to get going. They've got a destination and it is not at the border. So there's no homeless folks in Eagle Pass. There are no stragglers just hanging around. At least I didn't see any. And I was there from a Wednesday evening to a Saturday night. I flew out of San Antonio later that night. So I spent the better portion of Saturday flying the drone, getting some drone footage and just kind of checking out what's going on, because it takes you a few days to kind of realize what you've got going on. I'd say the most bizarre portion of my experience was just how easy it was for me as a U.S. citizen to just basically walk into Mexico, walk back. I could have had anything in my backpack on the way back because U.S. border didn't seem to be too interested. They took a glance at my passport and said, yep, come on in. And it's just this super easy experience. But the real wild experience, and I've got a full video on it that's, I think, being released today, called Into Mexico, was I shot all this footage literally on the paths of where the migrants step into the water on the Rio Grande and make their way across the river. I went up and down that, and there was maybe a couple of military personnel from Mexico. But for the most part, it's just this really nice park and this really nice plaza. It's got a name. It's a plaza that celebrates the 3 different types of people that this portion of Mexico is made up of. Plaza de la Culturas, something like that. But it's just this, on the U.S. side, you've got barbed wire, you've got boxcars, you've got Humvees, you've got guys with guns on top of the boxcars. You've got all this going on. Let me show you a picture of that. Yeah, so this is what, this is a little bit to the south of the International Bridge. You've got golfers. Shelby Park has a golf course. You got golfers playing golf as this goes on. At night, they're not obviously playing golf, but yeah, it's just this crazy thing. And I could literally hear these 2 U.S. soldiers, the 2 federal the National Guard, I could hear them talking across the river. So if somebody was in the water screaming for help, you would have heard them, is my kind of opinion. So wherever all this took place, it wasn't necessarily where the feds said it was, because the feds need this for their lawsuit, right? They want to try and get Texas out of there. They want to regain control. And this makes Biden look terrible. Makes him just look like he's just got no guts, right? This will be a really super interesting situation to follow, because this is the crux of the immigration issue going into the 2024 elections. This immigration is the number 1 issue, I think, by far. The economy, yeah, it's trying to get back on its feet, but this is it. So this storyline right here and the lawsuit and this drowning that have been brought into the paperwork for the lawsuit of Federal Border Patrol getting Texas out of their own park. It's going to be a crazy deal. Shenanigans galore. That's what we've got going on. All right. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.